I'm Kira, and today I'm taking beloved Highlander committee member Voltie to court because she lied to me about playing Boros and Highlander. Welcome back!
Hi everyone, I'm Voltie and I'm a filthy liar. Good to be back on the show and happy to be talking about Highlander as always.
So a brief kind of setup for everyone who might be wondering, Kira, you can't be going around accusing Voltie of lying about things. That seems so incredibly rude of you. Anyone who watched one of your previous episodes where we were talking about 8-point and the 8-point archetype and what 8-point does for Highlander as a format, one of the things that you really honed in on was 2-color decks. You know, your Dimir Moons and your Boros aggro type decks should almost exclusively be 8 points because the 8th point is really important to archetypes that aren't playing RL cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then last month at Highlander Worlds, someone registered a 7-point Boros list.
Yeah. I mean, I think she had a pretty good run. And to my knowledge, Plateau was the only RL card that she played. But there were some notable exclusions from the points by being 7-point. No fourth Earlinger, so she couldn't get the Monarch. No Fable of the Mirror Breaker, which obviously had a bunch of synergies with cards. But, you know, good run, solid result. I mean, I think she was in top 16, maybe just outside of it. But yeah, no, I mean, it raises a couple of good questions about how much is a Plateau worth? How much is an Underground Sea worth to your deck? But yeah, shout outs to her, Boros. We love red white. We love red white aggro.
For those of you who maybe can't sense the irony and the sarcasm, Voltie won Highlander Worlds on 7-point Boros. And
yeah, it was me. That's right. Yeah.
And got to win a coveted Time Walk. You know, just a casual, 5-point card. No big deal. But seriously, congratulations is owed. That was a seriously impressive event. I think it was, 205
something like that,
players, which is not nothing. And of course, Highlander Worlds was put on by Pat and the MTG Bazaar crew. So as always, sponsors of the show. Big round of applause to Pat and the Bazaar crew. It was an amazing event. I was very lucky to do commentary for that event. Mm-hmm. It was overall a really good time. And you were ripping through the competition, it felt like. And something that you've kind of mentioned to me is this underlying feeling of quote unquote aggro is dead. Was this kind of your all right bet decision to play Boros aggro?
That was at least 70% of it, I would say. As someone who is very much a fan of playing Savannah Lions, playing Jackal Pup, curving 1-drop into double 1-drop into a pile of creatures and removal and getting your opponent dead. The general discourse and sentiment over the course of the last couple of weeks and months has been that you can't be an aggressive deck. You have to be a mid-range deck. You have to have a bunch of 3-drops in your deck. You have to have a bunch of 4-drops in your deck because all of the 1-drops are bad. All of the curve decks are bad. You have to be doing something unfair, or you have to be highly interactive to beat any of the combo decks. And it just didn't sit well with me for a couple of reasons. And I had 2 hypotheses that I wanted to try and check playing this event. One was, do you have to be playing fast mana? Do you have to be doing something unfair? Do you have to be cheating out threats ahead of curve in order to be aggressive? Do you have to be locking your opponent out of the game to be aggressive? And the other hypothesis is, how bad is it really to have a bad matchup in 7-point? And this is very much a thing that, as a competitive player who plays all of the 4-card formats, I am well aware that a lot of really, really good decks in a lot of formats will just have a bad matchup that they can't win. And that's the nature of 4-of Magic. That's the nature of constructed Magic as a whole. And one of the big things with the 7-point community is, but I can't win this matchup. What sideboard cards do I need to play? What do I need to be doing differently? What do I need to be doing better? And my response is, sometimes you just lose. Like, it's okay to lose. you're meant to lose about 50% of your games. And if you can't fix a matchup with some magical Christmas card that doesn't exist, that doesn't mean you should have 14 sideboard cards for it. It means you just have your plan A, you hope that your plan A works, and if it doesn't, you lose that game, and that's okay. So those two things were definitely in the back of my mind when visiting this deck. In general, there are a lot of different ways to build an aggressive deck in the format, but the vast majority of people have decided that Ancient Tomb is a necessity, Chrome Mox is a necessity, or Force of Will and Thoughtseize and 7 sideboard cards are a necessity. And my deck had 23 actual lands plus 2 or 3 lands that were kind of lands.
Mm-hmm.
0 mana spells except for Solitude and Fury. 0 interaction, 0 discard. It was a 1-drop into double 1-drop deck. And I went 6-0-2 and then 3-0, and I won the whole event. And at no point did I ever interact with my opponent for 0 mana. There wasn't even a misstep. Like, it was just, what if they're just dead?
Well, in some ways, how do you approach a event like this? Looking at Highlander Worlds as, this culmination of, quote unquote global Highlander, largely Australian Highlander, but global Highlander. Highlander Worlds. We have 200 players. You have no idea what's going to be into the room. It sounds very much like you're making considerations of, I don't care what you're doing. My goal is to win, and I am going to win through whatever your plan is. How do you kind of come to that conclusion? What goes into making that game plan realistic? Because obviously, no counter spells, no free spells. How does that form? Because I think, as you mentioned, a lot of people look at a format like Highlander and go, well, of course I need to play Force of Will. Of course I need to play Thoughtseize. Why would I not play some of the best cards in the format?
My approach was pretty simple, which was Modern Season was coming up. I've been doing some prep for that, and we've been playing a lot of Standard recently. And the best deck in Modern is Boros Energy, and it has 0 counter spells, and it has 0 solitudes, and it has 0 discard spells, and it just plays a 1-drop and then 2 more 1-drops, and most of your opponents just die because they're trying to do something else. And if you make sure that your deck does the same thing every time, and you ask that question consistently, apparently most of your opponents can't beat that. And Boros Energy has been at the top of the Modern metagame for like a year and a bit now, consistently, the whole time. Yes, it got created because of the MH3 mistakes, but all of the mistakes that it's playing are just creatures. There's a 1-mana 1/1 that poops out 1/1s. There's a 1-mana 1/2 Soul Sister. That's the deck, And this is a format where Force of Will doesn't exist, but Force of Negation does exist. People can put Atraxa into play and keep it in play on turn 2 and turn 3. People can Neobrand into a Grizzlebrand on turn 2, draw their whole deck. That's just some of the things you can do. You can Thoughtseize into Psychic Frog and protect your frog. You can play a Tameo on turn 1. You can dredge your whole deck. You can Belcher your opponent. There are so many things you can do that just kill people. And the deck that is sitting at the top of Modern for the entire time has 4 Soul Sisters, 4 1-mana 1/1s that make a 1/1, so Doom Traveler, and 4 Savannah Lions. That's its aggressive core.
Yeah.
It has Ajani, which is 2 mana for a 1/2 and a 2/1. That's Watchwolf. That is the second best threat in the deck.
Yeah.
And in Standard, Badgermole Cub and Lanawa Elves decks can go over the top. They can create a hoof you and attack you for 1 million. Or we can play Ouroboros, which is Gavany Township. It's 4 mana, grow my guys. And the next turn, if it's still alive, grow my guys again. One of the best decks in the format. It's playing a 1 mana. It's just, it feels like there are a lot of really, really powerful things you can do in a bunch of the 4-of formats right now. And for some reason, everyone thinks that those are necessary. And it's been consistently proven time and again that these things aren't necessary. White Plume Adventurer got banned in Legacy. That's a 3 mana 3/3. And you would cheat it into play, and that would be good. But if you get the initiative and put a basic Plains in your deck, and then 10 copies of Tendrils of Agony go on the stack, nice. Nice Nessie and Corsa. Well done, you know? So yeah, I figured that would probably apply to 7 In terms of building the actual deck, it was mostly sifting through Boros energy lists in Modern, Mardu energy lists in Legacy, initiative lists in Vintage, although those weren't as applicable, and a couple of lists from prior to Amp Raptor getting banned when they're a bit lower to the ground, and then fixing the numbers. I don't get to play 4 Guide of Souls, 4 Oslo Pride, 4 Ragavan, but I did want to play 12 1-drops.
Yep.
And once you just like copy paste the numbers and then replace cards, you get pretty close to what I played.
How often do people underestimate the 2 Thraben Inspectors?
All the time.
All the time.
Guide of Souls is a 1 mana 1/2 that maybe does something. That's Thraben Inspector. And Guide of Souls is broken. It's playable in every format. Incredibly scary. Everyone is so scared of that card. It's just a 1 mana 1/2 that maybe does something.
This is the new I time walked my opponent that's just a Thraben Inspector.
Yeah.
That's gonna be your new appraisal.
Yeah, I mean, I played a Ragavan, but I didn't get to play 4 Ragavans. Ragavan's just a Savannah Lands that does some stuff. Basri is the same card.
Yeah.
Instead of making a treasure, you get a 1/1. 1/1's attack for 1.
Yeah, treasures don't attack for anything. Yeah. Well, so something, talking about your deck building really quickly, because that is why I have brought you to court today, is because way back when we were talking about 8 Point, we talked about 8 Point Boros. The only reason your deck is 7 Point is because of the Plateau that you're playing. And what is the kind of thought process behind that?
There's a long answer and a short answer.
We'll start with the short answer.
The short answer is that my partner bought a Plateau because the Plateau that was meant to be brought to me for an event at Plenty of Games a couple of weeks prior did not arrive to the store. And she said, well, owning a Plateau is nice. And I was building a Mardu deck, and I had 74 cards ready to go. And I got to the store, and the Plateau that was meant to be there was not there. And Ash was like, well, this fills out the dual land suite. So she bought a Plateau and gave it to me. And then I won that event on that day with the Plateau. And then we were in our team meeting a week later, me, Ash, and Kyle. And I said, I'm thinking of playing Boros. I'm pretty sure it's meant to be 8 points. But then the Plateau wouldn't be getting played. And the immediate response was, but I bought it for you.
Classic partner guilt.
Yeah. So I knew at that point that I had to register Plateau.
Yep.
If I was registering Boros at all. There were some other brews that I was thinking of. None of them had Plateau. I got scolding looks, went back to Boros. That's the short answer.
That's the short answer. What is the long answer that people might go, oh, this is so wise. This is so intelligent. What's the long answer?
The long answer is a deck like this with 12 1-drops in a couple of different colors and a bunch of 2-drops and very color-intensive curves because there aren't that many colorless pips running around, and you need to make sure that your mana is functioning and you're spending all your mana every turn. On top of that, we have things like Arena of Glory and Dalcoven Encampment that check land types that you have. This deck would play between 3 and 5 Sacred Foundries if it could. But unfortunately, you can only play 1 Sacred Foundry unless you're giving up a pointed card and you get a second Sacred Foundry, which conveniently gains you 2 life when it comes into play.
Yeah.
Realistically, the way the deck is built with Flage and Guide of Souls gaining life, with fighting for the board, with things like Jit gaining life, or just setting up races where you have removed most of your opponent's pressure base, the 2 life didn't matter anywhere near as much as it would have for a control deck or a blue-black mid-range deck. If that Plateau was a second Sacred Foundry, and I still only got to play 7 points, I still would have won that event. It's not what actually changed it.
Mm-hmm.
However, if that Plateau was a second Elegant Parlor, or it was a basic, or it was a Needle Verge pathway, maybe I don't win that event. That's pretty much it. Realistically, the 2 life matters, as I say, it matters a lot more in any deck that is trying to make games go long. But what matters to decks that are trying to win the game early is casting all your spells and making sure that your mana does what you need it to do. And if you need to fetch for a red white land off your marsh flats to cast Ragavan, and then you draw a Windswept Heath, but that needs to make red too, all of a sudden you either have to take the L and get an Elegant Parlor and waste a mana, or you have to get a Plains, play a different spell, curve differently, and then try and draw a red source, and it gets really messy really quickly. On top of that, all the other pointed cards I could have played aren't very fun. I don't enjoy a lot of the Boros pointed cards that I could have played. If I'd rejigged it and played White Plume, I probably would have needed the 8th point. But Fourth Healing is a terrible card. I just hate its design so much. And I already lost Fable on a bet. So here we go.
Well, and so there is something very real about the color intensity and about the requirements of the deck itself to be able to cast its spells on time, because from what I hear and what I see in the list is like the overall card quality. When you look at cards like Thraben Inspector, Novice Inspector, I'm sorry, I'm gonna talk down about these cards for like 2 seconds, and I'm so sorry. But when you look at, most people, when they look at a board and they see Guide, Thraben, and they look at the opponent's board and they might see Atraxa, they may look at that and go, the Atraxa is clearly the better card. This is clearly the better side of the board. And so being able to execute your game plan efficiently and properly, like you could argue that your Plateau is your 8th point.
Yeah. I mean, functionally, the Plateau is there as a way to make the rest of your 59 cards work better, right? Anytime you play a pointed card over a dual land, the way that pointed card works in terms of affecting the other cards in your deck depends on a lot of factors. How many matchups it's good in, how often you get to see it, whether you tutor for it, whether you can tutor for it, whether it can bail you out of situations. So if your 8th point is Fable of the Mirror Breaker and you have no way to tutor for it, and you have maybe a Brainstorm to draw an extra card here and there, maybe you see Fable a couple of times over the course of the day. Maybe it's good in about 70 to 80% of those spots. Maybe it's not something you can cast in the other spots. And so that pointed card has a pretty small influence over the course of your entire day. It's how often you see it, how often it then matters, and how often you wish it was a different card in that slot. The thing with a dual land, and this is a really important level up moment for people who are looking at 8 points, investigating their 8th pointed card, investigating the dual land that they're thinking about saving up for example, is the Plateau in a deck with all of its fetches matters every single game. It's as simple as that. Every single time you draw a hand, you have 23 lands in your deck. 7 of them are fetches that can get a dual land with your 1 double color, 3 off color, 3 off color. So a full third of your mana base cares about this plateau. And most of your hands that have 2 to 3 lands will therefore have 1 fetch in it. If you have a 3 land, 4 card hand, a third of the time one of those is a fetch. Well, a third of your lands are fetches. So one of those should be a fetch, which means theoretically every single hand you draw in your opener cares about your plateau.
Yeah. You like functionally have the plateau in hand every single time you start the game.
Which means having it in your deck matters every single game for the entire day. And you can't measure that. Like you can't compare that to any pointed card that you could foreseeably draw into or have an impact. Yes, Plateau isn't going to win you any games. That's not how the card works, right? The fact that it could have been a Sacred Foundry and I could have had 2 Sacred Foundries and I still win that event, it doesn't change anything about how your deck functions and how your games play out and how you win games. But it always matters. And that can't be said for any of the other 7-point cards. None of them can always matter.
Well, because that's the thing is you always need lands to cast your spells for the most part, except in, pitch elementals, free spells, la 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 la. We're talking about actually when you play Magic and you need to cast your spells, you'll always need lands to cast your spells. And so being able to say every single game, Plateau will be on the battlefield versus in how many percentage of games Fable will be on the battlefield. How many times will I actually cast it? How many times do I pitch it to Fury? How many times is it a consequential point versus how often is my 8th point, my pointed plateau, on the battlefield? 100% of games. And I think that's a really brilliant, like as you said, level up moment to say, like, look at the percentage. How often is this going to matter? If it's going to matter 100% of the time, snap keep.
Yeah. And for the most part, how the points list functions and what decks are looking for certain cards, one of the reasons that Dimir Moon realistically doesn't need the Underground Sea is that most of the best threats that it has access to are pointed, and having an extra pointed threat in a deck that has a Brainstorm and a Ponder and a Probe and a Preordain, where it gets to see more cards, and usually has some kind of moon effect, which means they want to be fetching for basics, or they're playing interactive and they're not curving out, so they fetch for Undercity Sewers more than I would fetch for Elegant Parlor. That is where the disconnect comes from. But if your deck has 12 1-drops and you are trying to spend all of your mana every turn, that is a deck that doesn't actually want to draw Elegant Parlor ever, and realistically, ideally, would never fetch for it. You should be able to continue playing games without having to fetch for it and still spend all your mana. Sometimes you don't, and it's a nice fail case to have in your deck, but if I could play 3 Sacred Foundries, I probably would have.
So Elegant Parlor in this situation, like the kind of land, if you didn't need to play it, you wouldn't.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like, if I was building a Dimir Moon deck that was 8 points, would I prefer 2 Watery Graves or 1 Watery Grave and 1 Undercity Sewers? Probably the Sewers. But if I'm playing Boros aggro, I will take as many Sacred Foundries as you could give me.
Because there's kind of a tempo to the Boros aggro decks where when you're going 1-drop into double 1-drop, you can't afford to take the time off. Yeah. You need to have every single card on the battlefield. You need to have, Thraben Inspector into Novice, Guide of Souls Novice Inspector. You need to be able to then go Arabella, Ragavan, kill you dead.
Yeah, exactly. The reason that the deck had so many lands and so many utility lands as well, obviously it's very easy to build an aggro deck and have 18 lands and just be like, I only need to draw like 1 or 2 lands. But if you build your deck in a way where most of your cards replace themselves, as many of your cards as possible have mana sinks, you have utility lands that you can activate when you're flooding, you get to make every land drop in as many games as you can and spend all of that mana over the course of those turns. So if it's turn 2 and I've spent 3 mana, that's good, but that's my upper limit for turn 2. If I can hit turn 4 and I've spent 10 mana and my opponent has spent maybe 7, I'm way ahead. And once you keep escalating that up the chain, it's very easy for that particular list to hit grindy end states where I've hit my first 9 land drops uninterrupted and I've been tapped out every single turn. And that is a monstrous mana advantage over what your opponent has been doing. Yes, I'm spending some of my mana on cards that are theoretically weaker. Is a Thraben Inspector worth half of a Psychic Frog? No. Like, if I spend 2 mana on 2 1/2s and they spend 2 mana on 1 1/2, but that 1/2 is Psychic Frog, they're ahead. But if I spend 4 mana on 4 1/2s and they spend 2 mana on a Psychic Frog, 1 mana on a Cantrip, and 1 mana on Surveilling with an Undercity Sewers, we're approaching parity. We're getting to a point where I'm escalating on top of them. And that's just the way the deck was built. Is I have clues, I have utility lands, I have Basri and other mana sinks, I have equipment that I can move around to establish board states, I have Clamp to dump mana into and to draw cards to dump mana for. And I would say in basically all of the games that I won over the course of the day, I would have spent substantially more mana than my opponents did.
Well, and that tends to be the parity that people talk about the most, which is the player that spends the most mana wins the game.
Yeah.
And that seems to be kind of, tried and true. You played the most winningest deck at Highlander Worlds for singletons. You won the entire event, so clearly you did something correct. Is there anything that you would change about the deck?
I've been thinking about this since the event. I actually just really like the list. It's one of the closest lists I've had to a full 75 re-register it. I hate Comet. I wouldn't play it if I didn't want to win a dare. Fun story with that. I talked to Sam, who was running coverage the day before the event, and I hate Comet a lot. And I said to him, if I register Comet, can you put me on camera so I can try and roll a bunch of 6s, win an unwinnable game, and then we can clip that and submit it to try and get the card banned? And he said, yeah, but you won't register it. And I'm like, but if I do, will you put me on camera? And he's like, yeah, I guess. And that is why Comet Stellar Pup is a world champion. That is the entire story.
I do appreciate Sam engaging in this bet, probably in the back of his head, knowing that you were going to end up on coverage one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, to his credit, he did put me on camera round 1.
Yep.
But in the Winter Lotus event last year, which was a 2-day event, he didn't put me on camera for a single round during Swiss, despite me being in a goose costume. And I asked him, and he was like, I trusted you. I figured you'd top 8, and I just put you on in quarters. I top 8'd that event.
Yes.
He put me on quarters, on camera in quarters. I lost, but I was on camera, and he didn't force it. He didn't have to. He just trusted that I would go real deep, which I then did while sweating at 45 degrees.
Is there for your next event, are you playing, because like there's RC Adelaide coming up, there's the 100K for standard. Do we have any goose costume adjacent ideas for these next big events?
I will put them up as prop bets for my Twitch chat. If they participate, I'll do anything. Like, I have very little shame, if any, and I thoroughly enjoy creating a good story. And that's how I live my life. It's a pretty solid way to live your life, you know. The fact that Comet Stellar Pup has won the world championships is because A, I wanted to tell a story, and B, someone wanted to hear that story, and C, Plenty of Games finally had one in stock on Thursday.
Well, you did a very good job telling the 7-point Boros story. And congratulations again. That was an incredible performance across a very significant field of competitors. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing what you do next, what crimes you commit. I'm really waiting on this Yorion pile. You let me down yesterday. I'm waiting on this.
I wasn't able to play it yet because I don't own enough matching planes or snow-covered planes.
I can help you with that.
To play Yorion Mono White.
Okay, I can help you with that. I will make this happen for you, for my sake, so that I can watch Yorion pile.
I very recently bought 20 matching TMNT planes for a pauper deck. They're nice and purple. I like them. So Yorion Mono White, as many Thraben Inspectors as you can fit into a deck with all of the pixies you can imagine. Do you know what a Rescuer Chwinga is?
Yes, I do.
Banger.
Yeah, it was actually a limited all-star.
Yeah.
Back in Baldur's Gate Limited.
Yeah, I have received one in the mail a couple of days ago, or a while ago now. It's a little guy.
Yep.
That deck is full of little guys. And I will register that at some point pretty soon, I would imagine.
Well, I'm excited to see when that is. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before we head off, where can everyone find you and connect with you and engage with you, your content, and your community?
So I'm a content creator as well as a tournament organizer. I run VFNs, which is Voltie's Fight Night. If you want to check me out, you can join my Discord server, which is in a couple of different places if you want a link. Otherwise, you can message me. I have a little committee label on the 7-point Discord, and that's probably the easiest way to reach me. But otherwise, at Aunt Voltie is going to be the easiest way to find the Twitch stream, the YouTube channel, and the Patreon, etc. So if you want to check out any of the stuff that I make or any of the stuff that I do, those would be the places to go. And if you have any questions, you can reach out. As I said, join the 7-point server and just find me through there.
Thank you so much. I can't wait for Yorion pile.
Thank you for having me. I will be bringing the noodle soon, I promise.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you again, as always, for being a wonderful guest on the show. It's always a pleasure to chat to you and get to pick your brain about why we're committing 8-point crimes in the Highlander format. But we'll look forward to seeing you guys all again next week. New episodes released on Mondays at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Raise the Standard is proudly sponsored by MTG Bazaar, and if you want to know what other events are coming up soon, head to mtgbazaarevents.com. The link will be in the description. A huge thank you to the Hen House Recording Studio for the ongoing use of their space. We'll see you next time.